Michael Apate, hello.
So thank you for coming out tonight. I wanted to start by saying that this information is going to be on our website as well. And it's sort of a global overview of what your son or daughter should be doing in senior year, things they should be considering. And just know that in our group guidance model, it's small group sessions where your counselor is meeting with your son or daughter in a group of maybe 10 to 12 students. They're getting this information multiple times throughout the fall and the course of the year. So it's not the first time they're hearing this information, nor will it be their last time. So I'm going to start off the presentation, and then at some point I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Jones, and we'll take it from there. And Mr. Aponte is our tech guy right now. He's really good with that, so I'll let him start. So go ahead. All right, so our agenda is as follows. We're going to give you an overview of the senior year workshop program. Senior year, kids are going to talk, we're going to talk about standardized tests, which tests are required or accepted at most schools. We're going to talk about the mechanics of college applications, deadlines, and the process to get through that. We'll talk about the financial aid timetable, responding to college offers, college research timeline, and then we'll do sort of a question period at the end. All right? So it's going to cover a little bit of everything all the way through, and we'll take it from there. So right now with our senior class, we have several group guidance sessions scheduled. We've already done senior session number 1, where we did a transcript review. We went into Google Classroom, which again, for those of you who are not familiar, Google Classroom is a web-based product where your son or daughter can log into the classroom and get the information that they need. So they have access to this 24/7. So we've already done senior session 1, where we've covered some dates. We talked about college fairs that are coming up. And again, we'll give you those dates in a few minutes. Those fairs are scattered throughout the region, lots of different schools. You can go and get information about their programs and services for students. So we would recommend that if they've done good research, that they go and be strategic about which schools they're going to get information from, because it can be overwhelming, the college fairs. There's usually like 300 or 400 schools there. They're listed in alphabetical order. So if your son or daughter's done some research ahead of time, they may be more targeted about which schools they want to grab materials or information from. The transcript review, like I said, we covered that. We made sure their transcripts were correct, up to date. Maybe your son or daughter had a change of address, or make sure their classes were listed if they took a summer school class or something of that nature. So we wanted to make sure that they're meeting graduation requirements. So we had that opportunity a week or 2 ago. We also reviewed their post-high school plans. So we realize things shift and can change from time to time. So maybe your son or daughter had plan A at the end of junior year, and things shifted over the summer, and now they're looking to do plan B. So for some kids, that's a 2-year or a 4-year school, and maybe the major or program of study has shifted. For some kids, it's looking at a trade school. Other kids are looking at military options or the world of work. So by filling out that post-high school plan form, that helps your counselor sort of understand where you're at. It also gives us an opportunity to see where your son or daughter is looking, and making sure that they're looking in the appropriate places based on their interests, goals, things of that nature. The FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. So we covered that. That just allows us to submit documents electronically on your son or daughter's behalf. So that's something that they would have to sign. And then we talked about Raise Me. Raise Me is a foundation sponsored by Bill and Melinda Gates. So for those of you who aren't familiar, it's an opportunity. Your son or daughter can create a Raise Me account. They have partnerships or affiliations with a variety of colleges throughout the country, and they can earn money based on their grades, their service, their leadership, to go to certain schools. So they document all the way from 9th grade all the way up, any honors or accolades or accomplishments that they have. And ultimately, if they choose a school that participates, they can get money through that foundation to attend school. So it's not a requirement, but it's a nice little option. So we did senior session 1, like I said, maybe a week or 2 ago. Session 2 is this week. We're holding group guidance sessions. Again, they're typically staggered throughout the day. So there's 5 counselors, 5 periods a day we run them. So hopefully your son or daughter can attend with their counselor. So I think this week, I think I'm period 2. So we stagger them, so if your son or daughter has, let's say, a math test and can't miss, or it's a class that they really don't want to miss, they can come period 3 with a different counselor, or period 4 with another counselor. We try to recommend that kids attend with their counselor because obviously we know them best. We're the ones working with them throughout their high school career. But it's not necessarily critical because the counselors' classrooms are all the same. They're getting the same information. But session 2, we were working on how to complete and submit applications, how to request transcripts, letters of recommendation, and standardized tests. So in my experience, that presentation, which again, a group got today, and we're going to do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with a makeup on Friday. It's a highly technical presentation, and in my experience, we often get the deer in headlights when we talk to the kids about it because they're not quite ready yet to apply to college. So they think, oh, I have time, I have a November 1st or a December 1st deadline. What you're telling me is just sort of white noise right now because I'm not really into it. It's only when they start to fill out an application when they're like, wait, that's why that makes sense. But that presentation, how to complete applications, is in their Google Classroom for reference in the future. So we'll cover a little bit about that today as well. And then senior session 3 and 4 are application workshops for your son or daughter, which we'll be doing in the future because it really does pick up in the fall and early winter in terms of applying to colleges. So we recognize, although there's a general time frame to go through this process, every kid is at a different point, even though they're trying to follow the same timeline. So we offer these workshops at different periods of time because we catch the kids wherever they are in the process. All right? So we have lots of different college application supports. So obviously, the senior parent program, this is one of them where you're getting sort of a global overview of what your son or daughter should be doing. We have college reps visiting frequently in the fall as a busy time. So I know college reps are coming all the time looking to meet with students. So that's something we would encourage your son or daughter to take advantage of. They're listed on Naviance, which is our computer management system that we use to track applications and send documents. So you'll be able to, your son or daughter will be able to see who's coming and when they're coming. It's also on our guidance website. So if you haven't looked at our guidance website, I'll put a plug into that. It's been updated over the summer, and there's tons and tons of information there. So if you go to brewsterschools.org, schools, Brewster High School, on the upper part of the page it says guidance, and then there's a resources section or a calendar. On the calendar, if you click calendar, it's going to have when we're doing group guidance sessions, as well as what college reps are coming. You know, Penn State, University of New Haven, lots of different schools come. So we would encourage your son or daughter to take advantage of that time to meet with those reps. The reason why, if there are 10 qualified applicants from Brewster High School to go to, Marist College, for example, they may not accept all 10 students even though they're qualified. They want a geographically as well as a socioeconomically diverse applicant pool for their incoming freshman class. So even though all 10 kids might be academically qualified, they might not accept all 10 students. So assuming things are similar GPA, similar standardized test scores, similar profile of a student, if a student takes the time to meet with that admissions rep might be more likely to go to bat for that student and advocate for that student when they go to admissions review. So it makes that applicant become a little bit more alive, a little bit more real, as opposed to just looking at numbers and essays and pieces of paper. So that can be an advantage if your son or daughter takes the time to meet with those reps. College and questions, the dates are there. So those are a great resource for students and parents. The reason we have them in the morning is we recognize, and again at different times that people's work schedules may be different, but I've been part of those for quite a long time, and I always feel like parents are reassured, like, oh, I thought I was the only one who had that question, or I didn't know. But it was reassuring and validating to me as a parent going through this that, I saw some of my friends' kids there, parents there, and they had similar sorts of questions and concerns. So we can learn from each other and go through this, and you guys can get good information from counselors who will be there supporting that as well. The application workshops, as we talked about, you'll notice the dates, October, November, scattered, because we recognize, like I said, your son or daughter is going to start and go through this process at different rates of speed, so we try to pick them up wherever they are. In my experience, it's sort of, like I said, the deer in headlights look, and until they can sort of do an application from start to finish, then they realize, oh, that wasn't that hard. It really wasn't. So I have kids who come in, they start an application, but they got stuck on a few questions and they just need help. Boom, they can get those answered and they can move forward. I have other kids who just they're really busy with all the different clubs, sports, extracurricular activities. They just need time just during the day to sort of go and get basically permission to log in, start, go. I'll help you. Let's go. And they can sort of work through an application. So that's a huge benefit. The FAFSA, the free application for student aid workshop. So the FAFSA is sort of the main application to get financial aid. It's fafsa.ed.gov. Make sure you don't go to .com. .com will charge you. But fafsa.ed.gov, that's the application that you would want to fill out to be considered for financial aid. And we have the date up there of October 15th at 6:30. And the ILC is in the library, the Learning Center, right? That's what we call it. So if you ever see an ILC, that's upstairs in the library. The college admissions panel, Ms. Jones does a wonderful job. She gets admissions reps from a variety of schools to come and talk about, it's interactive, applicants and who they might admit. They try to get crowd participation, and it's not always so obvious. So they might give you a few options and say, hey, we have these 3 or 4 applicants, who do you think we would admit? And you might think it's applicant A, but it's really applicant C, and then they'll tell you why they would choose applicant C. So it gives you a little bit of insight as to how colleges review applications. It's not always black and white, it's not always by the numbers. In some instances, it is. But some colleges are taking a little bit more of a holistic review, and they're considering other factors. Extracurricular, co-curricular, leadership, service, personal statement, college essay, things of that nature. So that's always a fun night as well. The financial aid meeting, November 19th, 6:30 in the PAC. So we have someone from, I believe, HESC, Higher Education Services Corporation, is going to come in and give you guys some more detailed information about the financial aid piece. So that's a good night to attend as well. And then, of course, we have ongoing individual support for students and families. So just want to remind you, full circle, the group guidance model for seniors is heavy in the fall. Like I said, we've already had group session 1. We're doing group session 2 this week. Sessions 3 and 4 are going to be in the next few weeks thereafter. So in the fall semester, we really target our seniors because it's an incredibly busy period of time for them. So they're going to be getting a lot of this information, and as kids start to apply and their friends start to apply to colleges, it sort of gets movement and they get going. So it'll be here before you know it. So some standardized testing information. Many colleges are going to require standardized tests as part of their admissions review. The two main tests that a lot of colleges will consider is the SAT through the College Board and the ACT. They're separate entities. They're pretty much universally accepted among colleges in terms of what they're looking for. They measure slightly different skills. The SAT is a reasoning test. It's math and English, writing, and the ACT is more like Regents exams. It's math, English, science, and social science. So I wouldn't say one is easier or harder than the other. They just measure slightly different skills. If your son or daughter hasn't registered to take that standardized test yet, or they think they're going to retake them, now is a good time to have them log in and register. Brewster High School is a testing site for those exams. If you were to choose to register and take the test here, October, November, those are good months to take them. If you wait until December, it's kind of late in my opinion. So most kids, I hate to generalize, but many kids are taking those exams once in the spring of junior year and then once again in the fall of senior year. There's no set requirement. You can take one or the other or both. It's really up to the individual and their family and how they feel about testing and how the kid feels they performed on the exam. Do they feel like they can do better? It is a main factor at many schools in terms of their admissions review. So in general, I'm speaking generally here, it's, GPA, rigor of program, followed by standardized tests, followed by leadership, community service, letters of recommendation, personal statement, things of that nature. Now realize I can't possibly speak for all colleges there. There is something called fairtest.org. So if your son or daughter does not do well on standardized tests, those are colleges that are basically SAT or ACT optional, where they won't necessarily consider them in their admissions review for candidacy. So it's another option. Again, that's fairtest.org. But those are the testing dates, October, November, December. Personally, I like the October, November. I do feel like December is a little late. And the ACTs are October and December. So it would take literally 5 minutes to go online. You'd go to the website, collegeboard.org, register for SAT, click your testing site, pay the fee, you're done. Yes?
So my son took it several times.
Yep.
Grades got better each time.
Yep.
Do the schools have visibility into that, or do we have an option to decide on which grades we send, and what's the super scoring?
Right. So the question was, son?
Yeah.
His son took the test multiple times. The score progressively got better with each test. How do you report the scores? We're going to get into it later, I believe, in the presentation. There's more detail with it, but the short answer in super score or score choice is oftentimes it's not unheard of where a kid will score, let's say, better on the math section in spring of junior year. I'm making this up. And then the English portion of the test in senior year, you would report both scores. The spring administration, the fall administration, and most colleges, again, I'm speaking generally here, are going to super score it. They're going to take the highest English and the highest math, combine them, because they're looking for reasons to admit kids in general. Again, some of the more competitive schools are looking to wean kids out, because they all have really good grades and they're all doing really well. But in general, colleges are trying to admit kids because they want their son or daughter to attend. So you would report both scores in that particular case, and let the school decide on how they're going to score it. All right. So other transcript information. So we have partnerships or affiliations with SUPA, Syracuse University Project Advance, Westchester Community College, Dutchess Community College, and then there's AP exam scores. APs are scored, 1 to 5. Typically, If your son or daughter scores a 3 or higher, there's a good probability that that score would count and they would get college credit for it. It's always college discretion, so every school is going to view that a little bit differently. But if they're taking a SUPA class or a WCC class or a DCC class, you would request an official transcript from those institutions, Syracuse, Westchester Community, or Dutchess Community College. And once your son or daughter decides where they're attending, they typically have until May 1st to decide where they're going. And once they complete the course, you would request a transcript from those institutions to be sent to the college where they're attending in the fall for review. So they could theoretically get some college credits depending on the courses, and that they would either be going in with advanced credit status, or maybe they would waive the, for instance, like, it's Dutchess Community College English. They might waive that English 101 class that kids typically take in freshman year, and they may enroll them in English 102. So again, every college is going to view those credits differently, but the key is when you request a transcript from those institutions, you're going to want to make sure that it's sent once the grades have been posted. So if you were to call and say, I want a transcript, a work study kid's just going to hit print the transcript, they're not even going to look to see if the grade is there, and they're going to send it. So if they're taking the course this year, those grades aren't going to be posted until probably the late June, early July, something of that nature. If they took a course in their junior year, obviously those courses would be posted by now. All right. So really, where that kind of comes into play is once they decide where they're attending, and they meet with a counselor there, and then they talk about what courses they're going to take. You want to have that evaluated prior to, so they get scheduled accordingly. All right? All right, so I'm going to do this one more slide, and then you're going to take the next one, all right? So where are the applications? They're typically online or on the school's website. There's the common application, which is, I would say, 95% of our kids will use the common application. And then there's something called the coalition application. So there's lots of different paths or venues. You can go to a school's website, hartwick.edu, look, there'll be a link that says like apply here, and you can download or use the school's individual website. There's the SUNY application, there's the CUNY application, the City University of New York. There really isn't a benefit to using one over the other. I think kids prefer the common application because there's over 750 schools that participate with it. So it's one application and I can fire it off to multiple schools. So they're sort of the largest. But we'll get into that in a minute. So how many schools do we apply to? On average, it's about 5 to 7. It's a tough one to answer. We want to make sure your son or daughter is applying to, we call them reach, range, and safety, or probable admit schools. So you want to, let's say your son or daughter looks at a college, they really like it, but their profile is slightly higher GPA, higher standardized test scores. Well, it's okay to have some reach schools, right? Obviously, with each application, there's a fee attached to it. So a couple of reach schools, there's nothing wrong with that. And we can define a couple. Every family is going to define that differently. So I've had students who apply to one school, and I've had kids who have applied to dozens of schools. The average is about 5 to 7. But you want to get a good mix of that reach, range, and safety. Range, similar GPAs, similar standardized test scores. Safety, or a probable admit school, where your son or daughter has exceeded the standardized test and/or GPA requirement. So that way we're sort of hedging our bet, making sure we've got a good mix of schools for them to consider. A financial safety. So, financial aid is sort of like a car, I guess, when you're purchasing a car. The MSRP, you usually don't pay that. So colleges are going to range from $23,000, $24,000 for your SUNY schools. Your community college schools are about $4,000 a year. Your private schools are anywhere from, you know, $30,000 to $75,000 a year. So you want to, now is a good time to talk about, although it may be difficult to talk to your son or daughter, but if this is what we can afford, this is what we can afford. So we don't want to only look at schools that are requiring this much money, because it would be really bad if we get into some really nice schools, but we just don't have the money to send you. That being said, I wouldn't eliminate a school based on their sticker price, because you're typically not paying that full price. If you apply for financial aid, scholarships, things of that nature, sometimes that cost can come down considerably. So I think it's an important conversation to have, but I would keep all options on the table at this point and get a good mix of schools, you know, if finances are a concern as well. How to submit materials. So your son or daughter is responsible for the application. Typically, counselors don't review applications, so it's important that they check them, they review them, they make sure they answer the questions completely, use good punctuation, put forth their best foot. The transcripts and letters of recommendations are sent through Naviance. So Naviance, again, your son or daughter has used it, Naviance. You'll hear it referred to as Family Connection or Naviance. It's the same system. We've been using that since 9th grade, so they're very familiar with this system. But that's your counselor's notification as to where your son or daughter is applying. So we'll send transcripts, secondary school reports, teacher letters will be uploaded and sent through that system. Primarily, counselor letter will be sent through Naviance. Standardized test scores are sent directly from the testing agency. So collegeboard.org for SAT, ACTstudent.org for the ACT. So you're responsible, your son or daughter is responsible to go to those websites. It's very easy. You'll see send scores, you click the link, you identify the colleges that you'd like them sent to, and then you pay, I don't know, $12 a school to send that information out, all right? And then lastly, mid-year grades are automatically sent to any college in Naviance. So many colleges are going to look at mid-year grades, first and second quarter grades, how well your son or daughter is doing. So information comes from various points, from the student, from the teachers, from the counselor, from the school. It all gets there. In the event that something's missing, they'll often email your son or daughter and say, hey, we're missing a teacher letter or whatever, which will then prompt your son or daughter to follow up with the teacher that did not upload the letter. All right? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Jones. Thank you.
Just to reiterate, your students were given a copy of their transcript. At the top of their transcript is a number of credits that they've earned through junior year and their GPA. That GPA number is a fixed number. It is not going to change. But how you do and how you continue to challenge yourself and the grades you get in senior year can make a huge difference. I really believe that colleges, they realize 8th and 9th grade, you're 14, 15 years old taking college level classes. If they see this trajectory of higher grades, because I think some students get disappointed like, oh, GPA, it's not going to change. But we have mid-year grades will go to every school that every senior has applied to. We get dozens of calls for first quarter grades, okay? So all those seniors that came in the last couple weeks wanted to, have first period off and 9th period off, and we kept saying, no, this is the reason why. Okay, so there's basically 4 different admission deadlines. And one thing I also want to say is, as Mr. Marker alluded to, there is a lot of information coming from a lot of different sources. In most cases, as long as the deadline is met by the student and they hit send, and please don't do it at 11 o'clock on November 14th because you have a November 15th deadline. In the majority of cases, you have met the deadline, and then we will, as promptly as possible, get all the supporting materials in. There are a couple of schools, so always double check the school's website, that want everything there by the deadline, okay? So a quick overview of the different ways to apply to school, okay? And this is on Naviance about the schools. or again, you can always go into the admissions tab. So rolling admission, this is one I think students can sometimes put on the back burner because it doesn't have a specific deadline. As soon as they get your entire package, and that means letters, transcripts, counselor letter, SAT scores, they will evaluate your schedule, your transcript, your application, sorry. Many of the SUNY schools are on a rolling basis. We had a situation about 5-6 years ago where Binghamton was just a super popular school, which it remains to be. And if you sort of put that one by the beginning of December, they had filled their freshman class. So rolling is really first come, first serve. But again, I think it's easy to say, well, it doesn't have a deadline, I'll just wait for that one. Okay, so early decision is the binding application method, okay? If you have been to, let's use Marist College or Boston College, not every school has early decision, you are committing to go there, okay? Most colleges, if they cannot meet your financial demands, they will allow you out of the early decision commitment. But you have to be absolutely sure that it is a school that you do want to go to. One of the benefits of it is because you are committing, sometimes the requirements are a little bit less stringent than they might be during early action or regular decision. So I have seen students, kind of really commit themselves, and it has helped them get into a school that maybe was a little bit of a reach for them, okay? But, we'll talk about it, and, if you've fallen in love with the place, then that can be a great option. Early action, there's many, you're going to see multiple deadlines from schools. They continue to want to make it confusing for everybody. Early action is you submit your application early, November 15th, December 1, those are very popular dates. And you will get an answer early. I'm going to say probably January. Mr. Marshner mentioned May 1. May 1 is the universal acceptance date, okay? Except for early decision, which is the one you committed to, you have until May 1 to make a decision about a school. And the reason for that is in October or October 1 is when the FAFSA form goes live. So again, I know we're giving you a lot of information tonight, but I would, as quickly as you can when October 1 rolls around, look at that, get that started, because you want your application in, you want them to get your FAFSA information, because you will then get an answer from the school, and then you'll get a financial aid package, okay? And the reason why it goes all the way to May 1 is obviously that all takes time, and then you can compare, school A to school B. I mean, we have a great state system. It's about $25,000 a year, which, certainly isn't, is a significant amount of money. NYU's tuition this year is $72,000, okay? They're a very well-endowed institution. They have a lot of money to give. State schools, yes, the tuition is lower, but you're never going to see a $20,000 scholarship from Binghamton or anything like that. So you never know. A private school with the right financial aid package can cost you the same, if not less, than state schools or community colleges. Regular decision, that can be sometimes as far into the future as February and March. I would encourage everyone to get your applications in as soon as possible. I just think it relieves a lot of stress. I think that it gives you more time to visit and possibly revisit the school. I'm always amazed every year, a student that had their heart set on going to Penn State, and then they go visit, but they kind of like this other school. So keep an open mind. Once you've been admitted to schools, there's tons of opportunities to visit them. They have admitted students day, so you can talk to the head of the history department, or they find out if you're into education, when am I going to get into a classroom, kind of a thing. So it is a process. And then by December 1, you do have to make a decision. Sometimes there are you may apply early action. I just want to give an example of this. In most cases, if you don't get in on an early action basis, the school may defer you, okay? And it's, as disappointing as that's going to be when you get that email, it's not a no, okay? They're just saying, we want a little more information. I feel like in last year's senior class, many kids, a vast majority of the ones that got deferred did eventually get admitted, okay? You know, the timeline gets a little dicey, but we can actually help you with that. So the majority of our students do early action. I think the majority of all applying seniors do early action. So the pool is very big. That would be a negative of it, but I would encourage you, you know, really by Thanksgiving, all of these applications should be out the door. Okay? Okay, so we referred to, you know, be accurate. Our English department last year kind of changed their policy, which I think was a great thing. They started working on the college essay last spring, which was great because these are, you know, the teachers had known the students all year. We used to do it with the senior English classes. So most of the students that I've been speaking with, their essay is either done or getting ready to be done. And it's an important thing. It's the one way that you're personalizing your application. Okay? Who is this person that's going to be joining the community that they're building? Okay, so English teachers do a great job. Most of them will meet with you individually, go over them, and you know, I just like to remind students, just be authentic, because this is your one way of, you know, revealing who you are, not a number, not a statistic, not a percentage. So that's the essay. So I mean, some kids started them and they're done, and they're thrilled that they're, you know, they started last year. Other kids have started over. So again, everybody's got their different timeline, but the college reps read them, read every essay. Okay. Recommendations. We've discussed this a couple times. Students should have already asked a teacher or two, okay? I wouldn't ask more than 2 teachers, because with the volume of applications, colleges are really, they're not going to read more than 1 or 2 letters, okay? So again, it doesn't have to be the class you got the highest grade in, but a teacher that knows you, maybe even a class you struggle in, and a teacher can reflect on, you know, the extra effort that you put into it. So again, somebody that you've got a relationship with. And there are 2. The teachers are very familiar with it. They, we went through the mechanics and group guidance today. There's a way through Naviance. You request the teacher send you a letter. We ask students, ask them personally, because it's a really time-intensive thing. And then through Naviance, you can request the letter, and that request generates an email to remind the teacher. And some teachers won't write the letter until they get that email, okay? But we're discussing that with the students. All right, did I forget anything here? Okay, so financial aid. As I said, October 1 is when the FAFSA goes live. How they do it is they use a 2-year look back. So your students are going to be going to college in 2020, okay? So you will need your 2018 income tax information. So gather that stuff up. We do have some support in that. That workshop that we have is the financial aid meeting on the 19th. That's kind of general. It'll talk about New York State aid and certain eligibilities. The majority of money for college comes from the colleges, okay? And they base it on the FAFSA. You're going to fill out the FAFSA. You can call your accountants, or you know, if you need help with that, we do offer help as well on that workshop on the 15th. It's not difficult, but it's tedious, and you've got to put a lot of information into it. And that is the gateway. That makes you eligible for whatever financial aid is out there for scholarships, but primarily, as I said, the money from the school. There's also another financial aid instrument you may have to fill out. It's called the CSS profile, okay? And that is another one that's put in, that is put out by the College Board people. It tends to be more private schools, some more competitive schools. If they don't ask you for it, we generally don't suggest you send it. what they do is they ask you for additional information, the value of your home, the value of your cars. So it can, you know, if they don't ask for it, we suggest you just fill out the FAFSA, and that will be the starting point for financial aid. In March and April, we have dozens of scholarships through the Brewster Education Foundation and the STAR Scholarship. We will advertise that extensively. You have to apply for those. And then in between, there are national scholarship sites. Maybe you're part of a union or a company that offers that kind of thing. Again, there's a lot of resources on the guidance webpage. Scholarship money goes undistributed every year, so you know, there are many things out there. As Mr. Marshner said, it's a little scary when you hear numbers like, you know, $60,000 for a private school. But as I said, those schools, they have big endowments. They want our students. They've worked hard. They've got good grades. That's also something a consideration to make. I always find this hard to difficult to explain. But aside from the SUNYs and the CUNYs, which we know have lower tuition levels, if you apply to a school that you are almost overqualified for, but it's got great programs, they're going to want you. And one of the ways that they express that they want you is they will give you a more generous financial aid package. I think also as tuitions have gotten higher, you know, people will wait till that May 1st so they can see, you know, what will school A cost our family and what will school B cost our family. And it's not inappropriate to pick up the phone and say, my son or daughter really wants to come to your school. They were offered more money or a better package from someone else, and they may or may not, you know, change the numbers, but it's certainly completely appropriate to call and discuss it when you're talking about $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. Okay, so as I said before, May 1 is the universal date. That's the day everybody comes in with their sweatshirt or their t-shirt or where they're going to college. That's always fun. You do have to send in a deposit to hold the spot. It is really good form to let the schools know. You're going to know after you've gotten a couple of acceptances that, you know what, I don't really think I'm going to Providence College or whichever school it is. I would really suggest you pick up the phone and tell them, thank you for your offer, but I'm thinking I'm going someplace else. Because that gives another student the opportunity to possibly be offered admission. There is something called the wait list. So you might apply early action, you might get deferred, and then they might put you on a wait list because they just want to know, you know, how many students are coming, and then you might get a phone call. So that's where what I meant, it gets a little confusing around May 1. But we do ask that students do that because it helps out everybody else. We will meet again in the spring, and we will ask you to fill out a senior survey. On that, it says, where am I attending? And based on that, about the first or second week of July, your transcript will get sent to where you have put where you're applying, okay? We get 1 million phone calls, and you'll get a lot of emails saying, we haven't got your final transcript, but you have to be sure they're all accurate and correct, and that's the timeline for all high schools. So, and that would also be the time that you would then get the transcript from Syracuse or WCC or DCC to send to the school. Okay, so we have, just to kind of put it all in some kind of perspective, we have asked students, the junior autobiography, for those of you that don't know, is a form that we ask students to fill out that we write our letters on. So there are 2 teacher letters, and they're addressing, you know, your son or daughter as a science student or a math student or, you know, wherever their interests lie. Our letter is more of a holistic letter, and there are things obviously that you've done that we might not know about, or family circumstances that would help us write a better letter. So we we require you to give us the junior autobiography. It's a couple pages long. There's a part for the parents to fill out as well. We ask for them at the end of this year and the beginning of this year. So if that isn't done, I would suggest that be something that you do. The colleges, we have over 100 college reps that come to Brewster High School. I mean, today we had Manhattanville, we've had Penn State, as Mr. Marshner mentioned, we've had Siena last week. These are people that are traveling to all different high schools trying to, share information. They, in many cases, are the first person that is going to be reading your application because they do it very territorially. The person from Siena that was here last week, they're responsible for Westchester and Putnam County. So meet that person, get their business card, shake their hand, create some communication. I have seen it make a difference because they get to know you and they know that Siena is one of your top schools. There's some dates that are going to come up soon, college fairs. We encouraged everybody to go in the spring of last year. There are the same similar fairs. There's one at the White Plains County Center, one at Yorktown High School, and one also at the Danbury Mall. Those are going to be the same reps standing there talking about their school. So you meet them at Brewster High School, they ask you to fill out a card. They go back to the colleges and they keep a database as to who's visited when they've been to Brewster High School, who's come to the fairs. They look at that in terms of you showing demonstrated interest, that is a school you're really interested in. Between 5 and 7 is the average number of schools. We've had students apply to 25 and 30 schools. So, when you think of it from that perspective, how does a school know how interested you are? They want to offer a letter of acceptance to somebody who's going to come. So the more demand and the more interest you show, that can make a big difference. September, November, standardized testing. I also just want to stress what Mr. Marshman said about test optional. We have some amazing students in this building, but they're not great test takers. And I would say that the SAT, which maybe 10, 15 years ago was kind of the gold standard, if you didn't get above a certain level, you weren't going to school A, B, or C. I think it's more a part of the puzzle now, as well as all the schools that are becoming test optional. What really tells the story is your child's transcript, how they've challenged themselves, how they've done. By the end of junior year, most of your requirements are met. That's why we stress over and over again, senior year is so important. I think it can be really stressful for students that struggle with standardized tests to just say it's just part of the puzzle. It's not everything, okay? There's a lot of new options about that. Anywhere from September to February, submitting applications. I like to say Thanksgiving, get all the papers off the dining room table. If you have a January deadline, we have to have all of your materials and your transcript requests and autobiography at the latest by the 6th of December. Sometimes we just get a lot of things right before vacation and it's just hard to get them all out. In terms of financial aid timeline, in September you can create a FAFSA ID. It takes a couple days for the government to come back and give you an ID. October 1 it goes live. We have that application workshop on the 15th. If you need to do the CSS profile, that would be anytime between October and January. November 19th is the financial aid meeting, and anytime March through April, apply for local scholarships. And if you have any questions about the admission or the financial aid package, so you're going to get a package, and it's going to say tuition is, $50,000 a year. We've got a $20 merit scholarship because you're a really strong student and we want you to come to this school. We've got a $10,000 grant, which is great because that's also money you don't have to pay back. And often in that package are loans, okay? So read it carefully. Do not hesitate to pick up the phone and ask for financial aid officer and say, could you please explain this to me? Because a loan obviously is something you have to pay back. So same thing with admissions. If you have any questions about the application or admissions or you know, I recommend to my students after a couple of weeks, call them and be sure they got everything. I mean, you know, we check and double check everything, but things can go missing online, and you'd rather know sooner rather than later. Okay. All right. So, Mr. Aponte, you want to take over with the Q&A?
Before we get into Q&A, just a couple of things. This is a long presentation. There's a lot of information here to absorb. We're here to pose those reminders. We'll be meeting with the students, as you know, periodically throughout the year to reinforce a lot of what we discussed tonight. And we encourage you, if you have any questions, not only on this forum, but even moving forward, feel free to reach out to us. It's pretty much straightforward. It's not always going to feel like it's rocket science, but as long as you follow these formulas and we all work together in tandem, we're going to get the students where they need to be at the end of the year. Fair enough? Are you going to show of hands? All right, so we're going to open up the forum to questions. Anybody?
I think what they're saying is we did such a great
I
job.
received that way.
There are no
Or the opposite, deer in the headlights. I also want to just mention that college questions, that's for parents, and it's tomorrow morning. It's very informal. We'll just sit around the college career room and discuss whatever questions you may have on hand. And Mike's point was a good one. Everybody thinks they're the only one. Do you have a question?
Sure.
No. The FSA ID, is that, where did you get that? When you know it's great, that ID?
That's the ID.
Yeah.
So
This how it press off to the first.
right, so well, once that slide opens up, you would typically go, create a profile, and then they will give you that information.
You can do that right now. Go to the FAFSA website
And they
and it'll
assign you.
say, put in your basic information, and in a couple of days, you'll get that ID. You'll need that ID when October 1 comes around to get started.
Correct.
Right?
That ID serves as like your electronic signature on those forms.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We'll go here and then we'll get to you. All right?
Wait, we saw you.
When requesting transcripts, AP scores have to be requested also, or are those automatically sent through the school?
Those, I believe, have to be requested as well.
They're put out by the college board. So it's up to students whether they choose to send them or not, okay? The AP scores they are not on your transcript. If you've got some, 3, 4s, and 5s, I would recommend you send them, but that's an additional step through the college board.
And is that something, because we have to pay for the SAT scores to be sent, do the AP scores have to also be paid for to be sent?
I'm not too sure. It's a good question.
They do. You have to pay to have the AP score sent as well.
When it comes to the college board, you have to pay for those.
Yeah, they make you pay for everything.
It's all about the money, folks. We had a question up there.
Yes. Yes.
So the question is, if an older child had an existing FAFSA with an ID, would that then be replicated for the younger child moving forward? It would. Yes.
So the question is, if you have a FAFSA ID, your FAFSA ID can still be used to sign for your senior this year? Yes.
So the answer is yes. Yes, one ID per family, correct.
So the ID, just to be clear, right? So your son or daughter needs an ID, a FAFSA ID, and so does the parent. So the parent has an ID, that's the parent signature. The student needs an ID, that's the student signature.
Other questions?
Yes.
So if you took the SAT and the ACT, for example, you do significantly better on, so that's the score you want to use. When you do the application and it asks you if you took the SAT, are you still saying yes, even though you have no intention of sitting that SAT score? I don't want to lie.
So if the college asks for all standardized testing scores, you would answer it honestly and report all standardized testing scores. If the college wants the highest standardized test score, and it was ACT in that particular case, you don't have to report the SAT scores, you would just report the ACT scores. If your son or daughter had the scenario that we talked about earlier, the highest, let's say, math in the spring on the SAT, highest English in the fall, you would report both standardized test scores for SAT, the spring administration as well as the fall administration.
Going twice. All right, folks, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.